You've been taught that attraction is about what you say. Clever lines, impressive stories, perfect timing, but the truth lands with a quieter weight. The most magnetic men don't chase attention with noise. They draw it with silence. Not the cold, closed kind that pushes people away. I'm talking about a deliberate, grounded quiet that signals certainty, presence, and an inner world that doesn't need applause. You've felt it before. The man who walks into a room and doesn't announce himself, yet people notice. The one who doesn't rush to fill every gap with chatter because he trusts himself enough to let the moment breathe. That's the lever most men never touch. And when you understand how male silence communicates power, restraint, and polarity, you stop performing for women and start pulling them toward you effortlessly. If what you've heard so far is shifting how you see yourself, stay with me until the end, because we're just getting started. Here's the tension that trips most men. You feel interest and immediately try to prove yourself worthy. You over-explain, overshare, overperform. You turn connection into a job interview. You give her a full guided tour of your personality, thinking it builds trust when it actually drains mystery. Attraction doesn't grow in fluorescent light. It grows in shadow and contrast. It grows in the space between what you reveal and what you withhold, between your steady gaze and the words you choose not to say. Women aren't turned on by silence because they want a mute statue. They're turned on by the restraint behind the silence, by the signal that you don't need anything from them to feel complete, that you can hold your ground without chasing validation, that you can hear her, hold the moment, and make choices slowly. The silence itself isn't the magic. Who you are inside the silence is. And when your silence comes from a full spine, from breath that settles deeper in your body, it becomes a force she can feel across a table, across a room, across a day. Understand something vital. The human brain is addicted to unfinished patterns. When a story is left hanging, the mind leans in. When a response doesn't come instantly, anticipation rises. Your silence creates that contour. It turns a straight line into a rhythm. Every pause becomes an invitation for her imagination to color in the picture of you. That's why neediness suffocates attraction. It fills every gap with explanation and eliminates tension before it can do its work. Practiced silence is not withdrawal, it's sculpting. It shapes the conversation by leaving edges and shadows, so the other person invests energy to meet you in the middle. That investment is attraction. It's how curiosity becomes desire, not through constant stimulation, but through intentional restraint. Think of your presence as a room dimmed just enough to make candlelight irresistible. You're not hiding, you're revealing selectively. So how do you wield silence without turning cold or weird? Start with your body before your words. She feels your nervous system before she registers your sentences. Slow your breath just a fraction. Let your shoulders drop by one invisible notch. Tilt your focus from performing to observing. The way her eyes move when she's engaged, the micro smile that flares when she feels seen, the subtle pullback when she's testing for strength. When you root attention in your senses, your voice lowers by a half tone. Your words land heavier, and your silences stop feeling like gaps and start feeling like gravity. You're no longer waiting for your turn to speak. You're choosing the moment to direct. That choice is power. It tells her, I'm in control of myself here. I'm not submitting my heartbeat to your reactions. When a man can hold that, everything he says afterward carries 10 times the weight. In conversation, practice the 2-second rule. When she finishes a thought, let 2 beats pass. Not a long stare, not an awkward delay, just enough to show you actually took in what she said. Those 2 seconds signal that your responses come from discernment, not reflex. They show you can metabolize emotion without scrambling to fix it. If she shares something vulnerable, your pause says, I can hold this. If she teases you, your pause says, I won't bite unless I choose to. Then you answer with a sentence that moves the energy forward. Concise, slightly angled, intentional. Ask a question that touches meaning, not bureaucracy. What made you chase that? Lands differently than, where do you work? You might nod, almost imperceptibly, then say, interesting, so you like pressure. How do you handle the crash after? You just opened a door into experience. She steps through because the space you created says there's room for her to unfold. A key distinction: silence is not stonewalling. Stonewalling is a defense that punishes, an ice wall thrown up to control someone's emotions. That burns trust and breaks attraction. What we're talking about is composed responsiveness. You're present, engaged, and selective. You allow moments of quiet so both of you can feel, not so you can evade. You're not making her guess your feelings. You're letting her sense them in your pacing, your eyes, the slight curve of your mouth when you're amused. When she's used to men tripping over themselves to fill every second, your steadiness becomes a signal flare. It tells her you won't be dragged into chaos. You lead the rhythm. That rhythm becomes the frame she relaxes into, because it promises consistency without begging for attention. Let's talk about texting, the arena where men broadcast their need the loudest. You don't need to play childish waiting games. You need to align your responses with your life, not your anxiety. If you're available, you can reply. If you're focused, you can wait. But the overall cadence should reflect a man with a mission. Your messages are measured and clear. You ask for the plan, you choose the time, you keep it warm but precise. If she sends a flood of words, you don't try to match it to earn points. You take the thread and tie it to something concrete. Thursday works, 7:30, a place with quiet corners. That sentence carries more sexual tension than 3 paragraphs of flattery. Why? Because your clarity compresses energy. It tells her that being in your world means decisions are simple, logistics are handled, and attention is focused on the experience, not the negotiation. Silence here is the absence of waffle. It's the clean white space around decisive words. Now picture yourself on a first meet. The easiest way to blow it is to turn the time into a presentation of qualifications. The harder, more magnetic way is to let the space do some of the work. You arrive unhurried, posture tall, gestures minimal. You greet her with direct eye contact and a relaxed smile that says you're genuinely glad to see her, not desperate to please. When you take your seat, you move with intention, as if every motion is a choice rather than a reaction. That alone shapes how she experiences you. When you do speak, you speak with calm cadence. You sprinkle in short, meaningful silences that mark transitions, after you compliment her mind, after she reveals a piece of history, after a joke lands. Those silences are frames. They make the moment vivid. And then you resume with a softer voice. You create contrast. Without contrast, every moment feels the same. With it, she feels depth. When you share your world, avoid overexposure. Talk like a man who knows his value doesn't need proof. Instead of listing accomplishments, paint a single, textured snapshot. I like mornings before the city wakes. Coffee, a pen, and something I'm building. Stop there. Let her step toward you. The urge to fill in the details is the same urge that repels. Resist it. If she asks, you share another slice, not the whole cake. It's a project that makes me a bit obsessed. I'll tell you once it's real. That's not secrecy, that's discipline. You're not hiding information, you're building a pace. Your silence says, my life matters to me more than your opinion of it. That kind of self-prioritization is intoxicating when it's free of arrogance and anchored in purpose. Silence also protects your boundaries. When a comment stings, weak men rush to explain why it hurt, or they lash out to restore equilibrium. Strong men breathe, pause, and let the sting dissolve before choosing a response. Maybe you grin and say, noted. Maybe you tilt your head and ask, why say it like that? Both options carry the same message. You won't be pulled into reactive chaos. Your pause turned a potential spiral into a soft boundary. Boundaries stated without heat are easier to respect. That's the paradox. A calm silence can be louder than any speech. It says you're not afraid of discomfort. You can hold pressure, and people trust those who hold pressure. Here's a tactic you can apply tonight. The anchored gaze. Not a stare. Stares are brittle and needy. An anchored gaze feels like a soft hand at the small of her back, guiding her through a crowded room. When she speaks, you look at her long enough to signal full attention. When your eyes move, they do so purposefully. To your drink, to the side, back to her. You're not scanning for validation, you're pacing the energy. Combine this with periodic reflective statements that are shorter than her shares. That sounds like it changed you. You like the edge but not the chaos. Then let silence do the rest. She will expand into that space because there's a man there to hold it. In group settings, silence shapes your social gravity. The man who needs to be the funniest or the loudest burns fast and fades. The man who is selective with his words becomes the point others pivot around. Offer a single, well-aimed story and end it before the applause arrives. Pivot your attention to someone else. Give a measured compliment, then let it hang without stacking more praise. Watch how people lean back toward you later, seeking that centered energy. Social proof doesn't only come from numbers, it comes from the feeling that your attention is scarce and therefore meaningful. Scarcity isn't a trick. It's a byproduct of having a life you won't interrupt to entertain strangers. When she senses that, her instincts whisper that stepping into your orbit requires intention, and that makes the dance hotter. Anticipation is fuel. Use it in your pacing. If you decide to kiss her, don't rush the approach. Lower your voice slightly. Let your eyes linger on her mouth for a breath, then meet her gaze again. If the timing is right, the space between those looks feels like a magnet tightening. You don't narrate the moment, you let the silence pull. If the timing isn't right, you don't force it to satisfy your ego. You slow down. You return to presence. You trust that desire multiplied by patience equals heat. Silence here is consent-aware leadership. You're not taking, you're inviting. You pause to feel her response. You calibrate. You keep the energy alive without pushing. That is how masculine quiet creates safety and charge at the same time. Women test for certainty, often without realizing it. A playful jab, a delay in responding, a story designed to see if you'll squirm. Most men flinch. They defend, justify, or escalate. You instead breathe and let 3 seconds pass. Then you smile, not as a performance, but as a recognition of the game. You're fun. Or, I'll let you have that one. Or nothing. Just a calm shift of posture and a change of topic that signals you won't be baited into the teenager's arena. Silence broke the pattern. You didn't reward the test with extra attention. Ironically, that often ends the testing faster than any witty comeback, because you showed her what she actually wanted to see. A man who won't abandon his center. There's a myth that confidence is loud. Big gestures, big stories, big entrances. Real confidence is precise. It's the subtle command in your timing. It's the way you put your glass down without clatter, how you lean back when everyone leans forward, how you pause at the doorway and scan the room with a relaxed curiosity instead of a hungry need. These micro moments are your silent language. They tell a story without paragraphs. And that story is simple. You're not starving. You're choosing. That choice is the freedom every woman hopes to feel in a man's presence. The freedom to relax because someone else is steering without needing applause for it. Now let's clean up the places where silence goes wrong. If you use it to punish, you poison the well. If you use it to hide insecurity, she reads it as fear. If you disappear without closure, you communicate cowardice. The correct use of silence is active, not passive. It's paired with attention, empathy, and clarity. You can say, "I like you," and I move slowly. That sentence, followed by silence, reframes pace as a standard, not a tactic. You can say, "Let's leave some things for next time," after a great conversation, and then end it while the energy is still rising. You can say, "I'm going to think on that" during a tough moment, and actually return with an answer. In each case, silence is bracketed by intention. It directs the movie rather than stopping the film. Your lifestyle should echo this. A man who schedules white space in his day carries quiet in his bones. You get more seductive not by adding more noise to your life, but by subtracting what makes you frantic. Workouts that empty the body of excess electricity. Deep work that locks attention. Solitude that clarifies your wants. When you live this way, your silence stops feeling like a trick because it's no longer something you do. It's who you are. You don't need to force pauses. They emerge naturally because speed no longer owns you. That's when people start adjusting to your tempo instead of the other way around. That's when she notices that time feels different around you. Slower where it should be slow, quick when it's time to move. There's a deeper layer to why this works. Polarity thrives on difference. Masculine stillness and feminine flow complement each other. When you stabilize, she can expand. When you slow, she feels more. Your silence is the open container she can pour herself into. But containment without warmth is a prison, so your warmth has to be felt through your eyes, your micro-expressions, your listening. If you're too still, you feel distant. If you're too warm, you feel boyish. The balance is what keeps her guessing. Never about your intentions, but about your edges. That curiosity is attractive because it's alive. It doesn't come from scripts. It comes from honesty shaped by discipline. Practical exercises sharpen this fast. For the next 7 days, Cut your words by 30%. Not to become robotic, but to force precision. When tempted to add a justification, don't. When tempted to repeat a point, don't. Let your original sentence stand and watch how it lands. Notice the urges your body throws at you to fill the gap. Notice how her eyes search your face, how her posture shifts, how her voice slows to match yours. In that field of observation, you'll find that many problems you used to solve with talking solve themselves with patience. If this is hitting something inside you, drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. Another drill. Tell one short story with a clean ending and stop right before the applause. Let the energy hang. Sip your drink, smile, ask her something that ties her into your story. When did you feel that kind of risk last? Now the focus is shared. Your silence between question and answer is deliberate. You're opening space for her to choose vulnerability. When she does, you reward it with presence, not a monologue. That exchange builds trust faster than any brag. Trust born from pacing feels like chemistry, even if you never used a single line. And this: if a moment feels awkward, don't save it. Let it breathe. Most men rush to kill awkwardness because they fear judgment. But awkwardness is simply expectation colliding with reality. When you hold it with a small smile, it morphs into play. We're both thinking too much, you might say, lightly, then shift the context. Walk with me. Command given softly. Silence while you move. The environment changes, the energy resets, and she feels your leadership without you pounding your chest. Leadership is quiet confidence under pressure. It's not theatrics. Your standards matter here. Silence without standards is just shyness. Silence with standards becomes selection. Decide what you want to feel with a woman. Playfulness, depth, reciprocity, and let your silence filter for it. If she constantly fills space with negativity, you don't lecture. You shorten the encounter and protect your state. If she engages, invests, and matches your cadence, you slowly open more of yourself. When you have standards, you don't fear loss. Loss is part of selecting aligned connection. That lack of fear is felt. It's the subtext that makes your silence charged rather than empty. You'll also notice that certain phrases pair well with silence because they're containers. Take your time. I'm listening. Say more about that. Then you stop. No impatient face, no anxious fidgeting. You receive, you reflect, you add a single sentence that shows you understood, then you pivot to something embodied, a toast, a move to a quieter corner, a suggestion to stand and stretch your legs. Words open, silence holds, action anchors. That triad turns dates into experiences rather than interviews. Here's a reframe that will change how you text forever. A slow reply is not a power move. A misaligned reply is a power leak. If your attention is fractured, wait. If your energy is clean, respond with clarity. Good story. I'm free Thursday. Or, nice trying to distract me. See you tomorrow. The humor is dry. The intent is forward. And then you disappear back into your life. She feels that your mind isn't idling in her notifications. It's occupied in your mission. That disinterest in constant validation doesn't make you distant. It makes you trustworthy. People trust those whose priorities extend beyond the next hit of attention. Silence also transforms conflict into intimacy when used correctly. When tension rises, you don't out-talk it, you out-breathe it. Give me a second, you say, and you actually take it. You look away, exhale, return. Okay, here's what I heard. Here's what I want. Clear. Simple. Then stop. Let the silence absorb the charge. Most arguments are fireworks fueled by oxygen. Remove oxygen and sparks die. You're not dismissing her emotions. You're keeping the room safe by controlling your flame. That safety doesn't make you bland. It makes you rare. Many women have never felt a man who can hold heat without igniting the furniture. If you're serious about mastering this, build rituals that embed silence into your days. A morning routine where you do one thing slowly on purpose. A shave without rush, a walk without headphones, a meal without screens. A weekly practice of sitting with your own thoughts until they stop shouting. A rule for yourself on dates. Move at 90% of your normal speed. Slower steps, slower gestures, slower sips. This tiny adjustment expands the sense of time and deepens presence. She will unconsciously synchronize to you. Then mix in strategic quickness. Decisions about where to go next, when to leave, how to navigate the environment. The contrast between slow presence and crisp leadership is the seduction. Let's draw an image you can carry. Imagine your presence as a lighthouse on a foggy coast. The light doesn't chase ships, it turns at a set pace. When ships are near, the beam illuminates them fully. When they pass, the light continues its arc. You are that rotation, steady, precise, indifferent to panic. The ships adjust to you, not the other way around. Your silence is the space between each pass of light. Within it, sailors feel both relief and hunger. They wait for the next sweep, not because you promised it, but because they trust it will come. That is how your rhythm hypnotizes without effort. One more edge case to master: silence in the face of compliments. Most men deflect or expand. You do neither. If she says, "You're different," you hold her eyes for a beat and say, "You notice details." If she says, "I like how calm you are," you answer, "It's better when it's mutual," and smile. That's it. Compliment received, frame reinforced, energy left to simmer. Over-acceptance turns praise into a transaction. Minimal acceptance turns it into a mirror. She sees herself choosing you and grows more invested. And when you exit, because exits are part of seduction, you leave with timing, not a flood. I'm heading out. Half-step pause. Thursday, 7:30. If she's in, she's in. If she hesitates, you don't bargain. You kiss her cheek, or you nod with warmth and go. The silence after your exit carries your shape into her night. She holds the outline and fills it with curiosity. That's the imprint you want, not a barrage of messages, not a late-night apology for leaving, not a list of reassurances, just the echo of your presence and the clean memory of your leadership. If this is clarifying who you are becoming, stay with me for a breath and check your posture right now. Uncross anything collapsed. Lengthen your spine. Drop your shoulders by one notch. Inhale slow. Exhale slower. Remember this feeling. It's not performance. It's baseline. When you operate from here, silence becomes a reward, not a weapon. It becomes a promise that you'll move at the speed of truth, not the speed of fear. Women trust that. Men respect that. You respect yourself for that. Here's your field test for the week. In every interaction with a woman you're attracted to, deploy 3 intentional silences. The first after she shares something meaningful, the second after you lightly tease or challenge, the third right before you make a decision: where to sit, when to leave, how to escalate. Use those silences as punctuation, not ellipses. Watch how the texture of the moment changes. Watch how she breathes deeper, how she leans in, how her tone softens. Then adjust. This is a living art, not a rigid rulebook. If she's nervous, your silence becomes warmer. If she's bold, your silence becomes more challenging. You match energy without chasing it. That is leadership. And if you have a brother who needs this, someone burning himself out trying to be impressive, send this to him today. Don't keep it to yourself. Make your circle stronger. The more men who learn to ground their energy, the better every room feels, the safer every woman feels, and the more honest our connections become. This is bigger than dating. It's about how you show up in every domain of your life. Your family, your team, your purpose, they all benefit from a man who can hold silence without losing himself. As we close, I want you to anchor one final reframe. Silence is not the absence of game. It is the presence of self. It's the invisible layer that makes your words land, your eyes speak, your decisions hold. When you master it, you stop running to catch attraction and start generating it by simply being. The world is noisy. Most men try to compete with the noise. You'll do the opposite. You'll create signal. You'll cut through with fewer words, stronger pauses, and a body that tells the truth. I am not here to be chosen. I am here to choose. If what you heard today lit a fire or calmed a storm, tell me what hit hardest. I read every single one. And if you want more of this, more frameworks, more field-tested psychology, subscribe and stay close. The next time you step into a room, remember, you don't need to say much to be unforgettable. Hold your center, let silence work. Then speak just enough for the truth to echo.